Good morning. Today on Spotlight, something voters say they don't see enough of these days. A Republican and a Democrat working together on bipartisan legislation and respectfully agreeing to disagree on issues where they differ. So today, from health care to Great Lakes funding, we'll talk to second-term Congresswoman Debbie Dingell from the Dearborn Downriver area and West Michigan Congressman Fred Upton, who has been serving his district since way back in 1987. It's Sunday, October the 1st. I'm Chuck Stokes, and this is Spotlight. And welcome to Spotlight. Congresswoman Debbie Dingell, Congressman Fred Upton. You've seen him here before. Democrat, Republican, and we're pleased to have you. And I know neither one of you like to be called Congressman and Congresswoman. You just want to be called by your first name. So if I slip up and do that during the show, the people at home won't think I'm being disrespectful. No. I'm just trying to please the two of you.
We'll get mad at you.
Okay, all right. Well, two people being angry at me rather than a whole bunch of people, I may not be good. First of all, recently the two of you got from the Detroit News the Michiganian of the Year. They paired the two of you up. It's got to be quite an honor. Congressman?
I was honored and not expecting it because I'm a junior member of Congress, and believe me, when you're a member of the minority party and a junior member, but I was very honored because I think we're living in very turbulent times, and I think we do have to work together. You have to stand strong for what you believe in and not be afraid to fight for it, but at the same time do it in a respectful and civil manner.
Mm-hmm. Congressman, your thoughts on,
right.
on this nice honor?
Couple things. Everyone across Michigan, across the nation, they hate the dysfunction that you see. And one of the things, and I was very honored, I was surprised as well. I had no clue that this was coming before they called a couple weeks ago. And, you know, for me, I've always worked on both sides of the aisle. I got a lot of really good friends on the Democratic side as well as the Republican. And, you know, as my constituents, they don't care if you have an R for Republican or a D for a Democrat next to your name. They want the job done. And the work that Debbie's done, and we work together on energy and commerce issues, and when we do that, guess what? The Senate often falls in line and the bills get signed by the President, whether it be President Obama or now a President Trump.
I think the American people are tired of the partisan bickering. They want to see us get something done. I think one of the reasons President Trump got elected is that they were angry. They're tired of the status quo. So I think we have to figure out how to address the issues that have so many people concerned, be it trade issues, which I think were one of the issues that resonated in Michigan. Healthcare is a very complicated issue and probably one that Fred and I have our most intense conversations about. And just because we treat each other civilly doesn't mean that you agree on everything.
You can agree to disagree. God
gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason, to listen more. And we don't know everything. We need to be open to other people's perspectives, learn, try to understand why people feel the way they do, and then be willing to fight and never give up what your values are.
You guys have had some success together as a team. You did the 21st Century Cures. You got that law passed. You've been working very closely on self-driving laws, automotive being a key
Great
component
Lakes
for this state.
There's a whole laundry list of things that we did. And you know, I've looked at Debbie for leadership, so we both serve now on the Energy and Commerce Committee. I used to chair it. We have term limits on the Republican side. Of course, Debbie's a great husband, John Dingell, chaired it for a good number of years as well. And our committee has arguably one of the most important, oldest committees, certainly in the House, but arguably the one with the most jurisdiction. You look at our record of getting things done, and it's there. And in fact, our 21st Century Cures bill, which speeds up the approval process for drugs and devices so that we can get those, you know, cures solved, or diseases solved, was coupled with tens of billions of dollars for more health research. We did an event together a couple years ago now with Tammy Carr at the University of Michigan. We heard from a lot of the disease groups, cancer, Parkinson's, veterans. You know, what is it, you know, disease strikes everyone, whether you're Republican or Democrat. What is it that we can do to find the cures for those? And that bill, which President Obama signed into law, was hailed as the most important piece of legislation enacted in the last Congress. The vote, 392 to 26. In the House, 92 to 8 in the Senate.
Another thing about the Cures bill was mental health. We need to acknowledge that mental health is an issue in this country and remove the stigma. We're both very committed to doing that. We need to be willing to talk about what's happening. It's a serious issue in this country.
Yeah, opioids too. That was part of the bill too. So
that's correct.
Was not a good bill to vote against, I guess you could say, which is why we did so well when we had the vote late last year.
All right, we need to take a little break. When we come back, I want to talk about some of the things that the president has talked about, tweeted about, that you all think might have a chance of getting through the United States Congress. We'll be right back. Stay with us. And welcome back to Spotlight. Okay, President Trump has given speeches, he's tweeted. Some of them have been extremely controversial, whether it's DACA, it's taxes, it's healthcare, it's TPP, it's NAFTA. Which one of those do you all think that Democrats and Republicans will come together on? And he's also done a couple things in the last few weeks where he's reached out to the Democrats, perhaps to the surprise of the Republicans. What's going on in Washington?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, I thought it was good that, and Debbie and I both voted the same way, we avoided a shutdown. We made sure that the country didn't default. And it passed with maybe 90 people voting against it. Overwhelmingly support, bipartisan, in the House, and the Senate followed
You
suit.
voted for it, but there were some in your party who thought that the president had lost his mind.
But a majority of us said that was the right thing to do. We took it off the plate and we got it resolved. What the president said about DACA, now we need to deal with this issue, and I have been in the forefront of trying to participate in a bipartisan way to deal with the issue. And what the president said was, in essence, I'm tired of the executive orders. You, Congress, need to do your job. You need to pass immigration reform, and you need to deal with DACA, and I'm going to give you 6 months to do it. I think we can. And I also think that we can do it before 6 months is up. And yes, it will be bipartisan. We need to deal with this issue because the current immigration system is broken. So let's fix it. Let's work together to fix it and help all the DACA kids that are out there that came here maybe when they were infant. They've been here, decades. They've gotten an education. They're paying their taxes. They've got a job, and we need to resolve this.
What the president did has terrified these young people who are parts of our community. They've never known any other country. They're Americans in their hearts and their souls. And they've been terrified that some kind of action like this might happen. And we've had young people take their life because they're worried about what's going to happen to them. The votes are there in the House right now. We should do this cleanly. We need comprehensive immigration reform. We have needed comprehensive immigration reform in this country for decades. We need to stop being afraid to act on it. We've got farmers, we have hotels, we have restaurants that can't get the people that they need to work in them. DACA is not going to take care of that. But for the moment, we need to act on DACA. We need to bring it. We should do it this month and help these young people who need to know that we are going to be there for them.
I recently talked to former Mexican President Vicente Fox. To paraphrase, he basically said the president needs to quit tweeting so much. He needs to grow into the most powerful job in the world, and that there's a big difference between being a CEO and being an elected official in which you have to represent a diverse group of people. Fair criticism?
Very fair. The president needs to, his Twitter's turned the world upside down, and I don't think he really understands the consequences of what his Twitter does someday. And some of the things that he says just so upset me. I represent the largest population of Muslims in this country, and they've become scared to death by some of the things that he says in his Twitter. It impacts the economy, it impacts the stock markets, it impacts the world, global, what's happening in North Korea. You do not conduct diplomacy of North Korea via Twitter.
Fred Upton, when the president refers to the leader of North Korea as Rocket Man, does that help or hurt the situation? Because to his base, I would imagine they're saying, yeah, right on. You call it like we see it.
Elton John. he's my guy. I can remember going to Kobo to see Elton John playing Rocket Man a lot of years ago. You know, North Korea is, we've tried diplomacy for a long time, and it seems to only be getting worse. And we have to rely on the Russians and the Chinese to help big time, which is why it was so important that just a week or two ago now, the UN adopted a resolution that actually began to hit them hard on oil exports and some other financial holdings that he has, to try and force him to say, you can't develop these ICBMs, which he has, you can't marry them with nuclear weapons, and you can't continue to launch them almost every week, whether they're going over to China's mainland, and they have, or now Japan, and targeting perhaps the United States, including here in the Midwest or some of our big cities. It's got to stop, but it's got to be an effort that we're not the only ones there. And that's why it was important that Nikki Haley, our ambassador to the UN, was able to broker this bill or the resolution that really enlists both Russia and China's support. And let's hope it works. We hope that the message gets there, but I don't think charging them with the Rocket Man is going to make a big difference. But
it's irresponsible.
Do you all feel as though there are enough checks and balances in our government to be able to offset some of the rhetoric that we may hear coming out of the White House? Yeah,
Debbie and I were both, I think, at a classified briefing a week or two ago. We had Secretary Tillerson there, we had Secretary Mattis from the Defense Department, as they outlined, just where things were in North Korea. Nothing really all that top secret, although it was a classified briefing. But, now with General Kelly there as his chief of staff, replacing Reince Priebus, some others are gone, of course, from the West Wing operation. I think there's, at least on the Republican side, a better feeling of discipline that's the Trump administration hopefully is going to follow, in a little more sense of stability than perhaps we had before.
All right, we need to hang on one second, need to get a little break in here. We'll come back and see what's on Congresswoman Debbie Dingell's mind, and we'll pick up on some things a little closer to home. We'll be right back. And welcome back to Spotlight. I cut you off, I apologize, and pick up with your thought.
I just want to make it really clear that I think Congress is abdicating their responsibilities. I think the three branches of government, the executive, the congressional, and the judicial, and I think Congress has a responsibility to be holding far more oversight over this administration than what they're doing. I think the president has placed many members of the Republican caucus in an awkward and difficult situation, but I think they've got a moral responsibility to start speaking up on the issues that they agree about. We talked about DACA, we've talked about immigration reform, but when you start talking about fundamental pillars of our Constitution like freedom of religion, and then start looking at what's happening on the environment, how anybody can say global warming is not real when we're looking at the third significant hurricane this season, destroying people's lives, islands, economies. When you look at the forest fires, and I'm not sure the word, when I heard we might be revisiting pulling out of the Paris Climate Accord, but I think Congress needs to be stepping up far more in some of these issues.
Congressman, is global warming, climate change, is it a real issue, or is this fake news?
No, it's real. It's happening. I've not been a denier. And the good news is, we've done a good number of things to actually reduce our emissions in this country. The bipartisan approach that Governor Snyder helped lead in the state legislature, which more renewable energy here in our state, more reliance on natural gas rather than coal, nuclear, and Debbie and I again have worked on bipartisan legislation that deals with the storage of high-level nuclear waste. All those things are very important. But yeah, climate change is real. It's happening. I was disappointed when he pulled out of Paris, but I also knew that it wasn't a treaty. Obama was not able to get that with enough votes through the Senate. So, but we continue to need to look at more efficient, clean ways of moving our economy forward, and certainly on the energy sector.
Would it be safe to say that President Trump in some ways has brought the Democratic and Republican parties closer together? perhaps?
Well, you know, he's, you know, I don't know if that's.
Well, I'm asking because there's times when he is ticked off the Republicans.
Yeah.
There are times when he's ticked off the Democrats, and I think sometimes you all felt, well, you know, in order to fight what we may be hearing coming out of the White House, we both have to get sort of on guard. You have Nancy Pelosi, who's been booed at different places. So, I mean, you all have felt the brunt of the American people, and I'm just wondering if maybe you are coming a little closer together.
Maybe the bottom line is he saw how I opened up the show with you. People don't care if you're an R or a D. They want the job done. They don't care who gets it done. They want the job done. That means you have to talk to each other. You need to listen to each other. You need to work together and move forward.
I don't think we're where we need to be. I think, you know, I'm still scared to death what people are going to say when people do work together. I think we've got to, I think the atmosphere in Washington is still more partisan than it should be, and that we've got to find a way. I think it's reflective of the country itself, which social media is making us much less civil than we used to be. And I think we need to worry about what's happening to our society. I think we're at a precipice, and we've got to take time to listen to each other and not let ourselves be divided by fear and hatred, which some are trying to do in this country.
Okay, we need to take another quick break. When we come back, we'll talk about a possible run for president and their thoughts on whether or not President Trump finishes his full term. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Inside Michigan Politics recently wrote about you possibly fielding calls for Debbie Dingell for president in 2020.
That's me if I had heard about it. I'm not.
Any interest whatsoever? I know you aren't out campaigning for it, but if you get enough of those calls, can they entice you?
I like representing the 12th District of Michigan. It is home. I do a great job. Well, I don't know if I do a great job. I try to do a good job. I love being in my district. I love being with everybody on the weekend and fighting for the people of my district, and that's where I'm focused.
She'd have to confirm that she's over 35. Remember, that's a constitutional requirement.
He's very good.
I'm not touching that one.
I got carded at the Tiger game this week, so I don't. So yeah.
Well, congratulations. You have worked with a number of presidents since you've been in Congress, and you've been there since 1987. Ex-president or retired president Vicente Fox, former president of Mexico, said that Donald Trump couldn't dust off Ronald Reagan's cape. You know a little something about Ronald Reagan. As you look back at the presidents you've worked with, which one was your favorite? Which one do you think was the best?
You know, I've had a relationship with them all. They've all called me Fred. I've called them all Mr. President. I was particularly close to Ronald Reagan because he was my boss as well. I worked at the White House for a number of years before I ran for Congress. And his style is what I have tried to do, not being a president, but a Republican president working with a Democratic Congress. And you know what? He got things done. He didn't care who got the credit, but he got things done in a major way. And the proof in the pudding was when he ran for re-election, and as you remember, he won 49 states. Can you imagine a Republican president today winning New York and California and some of these, you know, hardcore blue states? No, it would never happen. Ronald Reagan almost got all 50 states. He missed Minnesota. That's the one, and that's where his opponent came from. But that's the style that we need. You know, someone who, again, can cut through the clutter, has a good relationship with both sides. You know, Tip O'Neill, who I didn't serve with, but he and Tip had a great relationship. He had a great relationship with the Michigan delegation, the members that were here then. And the bottom line was proof in the pudding, he got it done. And that's the type of president that can work with both sides, which is why, you know, President Trump had dinner the week or so ago now with Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. And he had dinner earlier in the week with Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell. He's had a number of not only backbenchers to the White House, but prominent Republicans and Democrats, and is willing to compromise, at least now, on a number of fronts to move the country forward. And so the learning curve, you know, remember, he'd never run for office before. He didn't have a relationship with really anybody, I don't think, in the Congress. I'm a half full guy, half glass being full. I'm encouraged, I'm optimistic. We have so many big challenges ahead of us that we've got to be serious and work together to resolve these problems.
All right, 3 real quick questions. I'm looking for 3 quick answers from you all. I remember years ago, former Congressman Bill Clay said, in politics you have no permanent friends.
He was a good guy. Bill Clay was a good guy. Chairman of the Budget Committee back then.
From St. Louis, he said, in politics you have no permanent friends, you have no permanent enemies, just permanent interests. True?
That's what, you should never not be a friend with somebody. You need to always be open and to listen, because you may need them tomorrow.
You know, if you hold a grudge, vote or whatever, you'll never get anything done. You got to move on. You got to realize that you got differences, but you want to work together down the road. So.
And people are. The one thing I disagree on, you can be friends. You can have very strong disagreements with people and still be friends, and I do think they're friends in politics.
Prediction, does President Trump finish out this term?
I don't know that I can be in a position to judge that. He's certainly going to try.
What's your best guess, given the
I'd
investigations?
Say yes. So you go back, and I want every president to succeed, regardless of party. And it's our obligation, going back to what Debbie said as well, we have a system of checks and balances. Legislative branch, judicial, and executive. We need, to remember that those are in place. But, if I had to bet, I'd say yes, he'll survive his 4 years.
Does the president finish out 4 years?
I want to see the results of the Mueller investigation, and we'll go from there.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
All right. Last question goes to you. How in the world did you let Justin Verlander get away from the Detroit Tigers? For the audience that doesn't know, you're Kate Upton's uncle. There's a relationship there.
And he's a really good guy. All the family members have gotten to know him over the last couple of years. I went to the Tiger game this week, and the woman came down the aisle, and they didn't know who I was. And they said, "Do you all need anything? Like, peanuts, popcorn, whatever." And I go, "Can we have Justin Verlander come back?" And my whole section got up, and they wanted to do a wave. You're right. You're right. And we miss him here. He's a talented guy. He's going to end up pitching in the World Series. I mean, that's his desire. But, when he gets into the Hall of Fame, he'll be wearing a Tiger uniform.
All right, make sure he gets you some tickets to the World Series.
I got to pay for him.
You got to pay. That's all right.
That's the law. I will. I'll pay for him.
All right, Congressman, always good having you over here in Southeast Michigan. Come visit us from time to time. We appreciate it. Congresswoman, always good talking with you. Give our best to John Dingell.
I will, and I miss Justin every single day. I cried.
All right.
He knows it. I blamed him. It's the Republicans' fault again.
We got a new stadium. We're going to work on the Tigers for next year. This year is pretty much gone. We want to thank you at home for joining us. I'm Chuck Stokes. We'll be back next week with more Newsmakers in the Spotlight. We hope you have a great week.